Hi everyone. This is Micah here with and I'm here with Sarah, who's with Virtual Bytes,
Hey,
and we're gonna
virtual lights.
let us know if the audio is better this time because we're gonna try to re-record the um, the NerveGear show that we did yesterday. So I hope the audio is better this time. So Sarah here is a neuroscientist. From
Yes.
and where did you study neuroscience?
I was studying in the Founders Institute in the Netherlands. I was studying researching psychedelics, and then I pivoted because it's really hard to actually give people psychedelics. Getting their approval takes years and years. And I opened an immersive VR lab in my department, and I was researching how virtual reality can affect our brain, can affect our perception of our body and our movement. And now I'm still doing this with Virtual Bytes. We're an education and research and art collective. And we really want to push forward these ideas about what this technology can do for brains, the good sides, and also the possible maybe dangers that we should be considering. And we come out with 2 demos every month of just these wacky ideas that we have of what this technology can do. And you can see them on our Patreon page under the Virtual Bytes.
Great.
So
So Virtual Bytes, they're doing like research by building actual VR apps now, tying it into their neuroscience research. And so Virtual Bytes was actually at the first SFVR 360 in September, and again in October we had, because we're doing monthly events, and so you're actually going to be able to see Sarah speak, by the way, at the SFVR Novem event, which is going to be at the Microsoft Reactor. This is the SFVR logo, one of them. We have many different versions of this logo. I'll show you another one real quick. Let me grab the camera. So this is our other logo. And so, gosh, I really hope people can hear us okay. I don't see a feed, but okay, so I wanted to we talked a lot of neuroscience last time. So the NerveGear podcast was sort of created about I really wanted to say, how could we accelerate the point in time in which we could do AR and VR without a headset and just by sending signals directly into the brain. And so this time we got a bunch of brain images here. So it's a really complex problem. But in general, I'm really interested in building next generation brain computer interfaces, and I've been studying neuroscience for 12 years. And I have I had a neurofeedback business. So we were combining in 2012. We were combining EEG, taking EEG signals, which, as you noted, are very noisy. Consumer grade EEG is very noisy. It's very bad. But we were adding light and sound effects to the biometric signals it was picking up, and that would include signals that are mistakenly muscle signals, like if you move your eye and stuff like that. EEG sensors, the job is to eliminate as much of that noise outside the spectrum of EEG as possible, so you're not picking up ECG or EMG or.
Maybe we should just remind people that at least from my perspective, one of the biggest problems of EEG is it doesn't, to begin with, pick up all of the brain waves, right? It just picks up brain waves coming from pyramid cells that are synchronized in your cortex. So we're losing a bunch of data even just to begin with.
That's right. For example, EEG sensors are usually measuring something in between 0 and 200 hertz, but brainwaves go up much higher than that. There's a neuroscientist who I got his picture this time. Let me grab this real quick and show you this. This book is The Neural Basis of Free Will by Peter C. Criterial Causation is a subtitle, and that book is really great because it sort of and we also got the On Intelligence book here.
We lost you.
You lost me. We also got this is On Intelligence by Jeff Hawkins.
Great book. Recommended.
Let's see. We also got Networks of the Brain by Orloff Sporns. See that one right there. So what I was going to say was so going to Jeff Hawkins' book real quick, and then we'll go back to Peter C.'s book. So Jeff Hawkins' book, and you've read his book, he talks about how grids of cells are complex enough to measure a 3D grid of cells is complex enough to measure a really complex sequence of inputs from any sensory apparatus. It can be a very general learning algorithm that stores like, so you can have incoming inputs from eyes or ears, from your nose, and it can store unique patterns with amazing complexity. And the patterns that it stores are based on patterns that came in, and those become predictions for predictions. So if you get a partial pattern that comes in, it triggers that same network that responded to a larger pattern to re-trigger the.
Right. This is really the uniqueness, and then I guess this whole predictive coding framework that is starting to gain a lot of access in neuroscience. I consider Jeff Hawkins to be the father of it because he's the one who started to look at this brain as a prediction machine, and that's really the first time where people started to realize that these top-down predictions are really, really important for the brain. It's not just what's coming into the senses at any given time, it's also what's coming down from higher parts of the brain that that the brain has already learned, right? So these predictions, and they combine with a bottom-up sensory input in a statistical way to create this world model that we have. We can hack this in many ways. And one of the ways that I'm trying to hack this, I guess, is through VR, because in VR I can really control the incoming inputs for the brain and then decide whether these inputs fit the known predictions that people already have or whether they don't, right? So when I'm looking at you right now, and you have a sort of avatar that is more or less predictable, but then you have this weird whisker thing that creates novelty for my brain, right?
Yeah.
And novelty is the currency for the brain. You really can, and I like to think of it as that's the economy that the brain works on. Novelty is passed on throughout the different parts of the brain, and then the brain has to sort of use that and explain the novelty to create this world model that we have.
Right. So, Hawkins' book really describes how our brains might formulate models of the world based on sensory inputs. But then, what was really great about Peter Say's book, The Neural Basis of Free Will, Criteria Causation, is he then says, well, in the brain, he says, well, maybe every neuron is a coincidence detector, and maybe the basis of a bit of information in the brain is a coincidence detection. And what that means is that if you have a hierarchy of cells, like I believe this is Jeff Hawkins' work. So let's say you have a hierarchy. Let me make this bigger. Then, okay.
Ooh, the magic of VR.
So if you have a hierarchy of cells, so let's say that the inputs, let's say your eyes, when the senses come to your brain, they go in through the bottom of the hierarchy first. So let's say your eyes are over here, and do I have a better one? But so they go up through the hierarchy. So what happens is, like, at the lowest level of the hierarchy, your brain, just like an artificial neural network, would be recognizing lines and edges and curves and colors. Is this blue light or red light? And then at the second level of the hierarchy, or the next level of the hierarchy, it's going to combine. It's going to combine these lines and edges go together. This color goes with this edge. And at another level, these lines and edges could be, like an eye or something. And at a higher level,
they slowly start forming shapes, abstractions, and combining also with the rest of our senses.
And the higher you go up in the hierarchy, and the higher you go up in the hierarchy, or the deeper you go into the brain, the larger the chunks get. So then at one level you're looking at eyes, at another level you're looking at, is this a dog or a cat or a car? And this is how like the self-driving cars are designed to work, where you see if I have the self-driving car one. I don't know if I brought it, but so the idea is that the self-driving car is basically using deep learning neural networks to representations of the world. Its concepts are how all the lines and edges connect at a higher level in the hierarchy of the network. And so basically you can say the basis of a concept for an artificial neural network is the map of associations between all the lower level bits that come in through the base of the network or the sensors.
Exactly.
And so some people don't think of you think of your eye as like one thing, but it's actually like lots of different sensors and lots of different edge detectors and color detectors. You
Yeah,
have
lots of different layers of computation. And what's interesting, I think we said we try to talk about also this sense of self, right? How does our brain abstract a sense of self that all, I guess, beings have?
Yeah. So I think that, if you look at I was going to get the book for Douglas Hofstadter. Douglas Hofstadter says that the self is a strange loop so it's like a learning feedback loop. So you have all these concepts of the world. This is a dog. This is a cat. This is a mouse. And then if you had a self-driving car or a person observing the world long enough, they'd begin to notice features about, like, the self-driving car should begin to notice features of itself if it could see itself or its relationship to other things. And if you had that in a feedback loop, it would begin to formulate a model of itself. And in some sense, it has, like, it's not a self-aware self, but it's like a self, like, can I move forward? And to get a self-aware self, you'd have to have not only a model of the self, but you'd have to have it in a feedback loop with all the other data. So I started this.
So the way predictive coding looks at this, do you know the rubber hand experiment? Maybe we can even try to show the rubber hand experiment.
If you want to.
That could be funny. So your brain is really, like you said, it just correlates different statistical inputs. And sometimes the best explanation it can come up with for these statistical correlations is these statistical correlations are coming from one being, right? So if I take a rubber hand and then put it on top of your hand, and all you're looking at is this rubber hand, right? Now we're in VR, so let me put, like, my hand on top of yours. Okay. And let's say I touch you at the same time as I'm touching this rubber hand. I need another assistant to actually do this. Okay. But you would start to actually view and I'd
start to think that this was my hand.
This rubber hand was your hand. Right.
Yeah. And in videos,
a big hammer, they squash the rubber hand and they really saw heart rate go up. So it's a very physiological, very real aspect of the brain.
And it points to the reality that what we're seeing as a model of ourselves is in fact data. And if you substitute your real hand for another hand, your brain just takes the data.
Correlations.
Yeah. So your brain. So it's like your model of yourself is just data that your brain is putting together. And
exactly.
That
shows. It's very plastic. And for instance, the clothes that we wear, the tools that we use, they all become part of this self model. Of what we think of ourselves and the basic body schema that we have. So
people think there's this people call consciousness the hard problem. Like, how do you explain what that is? And I think that there's several components to it. There's an audio component, there's visual component. But just imagine, like, an animal in nature. What I'm saying is that it's basically like, let's say this is a brain and this is the world that the animal is seeing, and basically what you're seeing right now, like everything you're seeing, is video that your brain is taking through the sensors of your eyes and through the hierarchy of the neural network, assembling into a coherent picture. And the reason it's like an active conscious experience is because it is, for the brain, a temporally active brainwave pattern, and in the temporal reality of it is something you can observe when like every emotion, every modality has like a sine wave. It has peaks, it has lows, it has, like, when you I like to say, let's imagine that you take a second of consciousness and divide it up into milliseconds. So you have 1,000 milliseconds of consciousness, and you looked at it like a movie. So it's like, if you take a movie and you divide it up into 10 seconds or something, and you're looking at each frame, and you say, what is happening in each frame of this movie? And you could say, well, in one frame of the movie, the animal or the person is looking at a laptop, and in another frame they're looking at the Vive next to the laptop, and this is your laptop from your work, and then they're looking at Sara, or I'm looking at Sara, and then they're looking at
Sara with a duck face.
Yeah, Sara with the duck face, and then I'm looking at this table and these pictures, and I'm hearing my voice. And so in 10 seconds of consciousness, I have this sort of like so let me grab this one right here. This is a
So
picture.
personally, I think that the consciousness, and I mean not just personally, I guess I'm in the Dennett school of thought when it comes to this word.
It's an illusion.
I think it's a useless word that's not getting us anywhere. I think we should start looking at the new neurons that we have, 86 billion of them, right?
Yeah.
And the moment enough of them get activated, it's what we call consciousness. But that's just because, enough of it gets to this area of our brain which we can convert into verbs and communicate it to others, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what we call consciousness is just this reporting idea, the ability that I can report something to another social being or in writing. But
so
the fact that we're, other parts of our brain are being activated and not the majority or this specific network doesn't mean that they themselves are not conscious. A lot of athletes, people that dance, anybody that's in the flow state, we are extremely conscious when we do more. What exactly my body was doing? Absolutely not. Right? I have to, in fact, let go. The brain has to let go of this level verbal part to be able to be in the moment and move it to reality in that way.
So this is an illustration. So I know. I hope the sound is better on the actual thing.
No,
what is that? What is that? Oh, where's that coming from? I don't know.
There's music in this suddenly. This is interesting.
Well, I don't know. Where's that coming from?
I have no idea. This is your old mic.
It's my.
I don't have access to the controls.
Oh
of this
gosh,
world.
I'm so sorry. But what I wanted to show was some settings. Mute. Wait, I hope that doesn't mute you.
He's touching the air from my perspective. He's just touching nothing.
Because you can't.
In this world, he sees stuff.
Yeah.
This is an interesting experience.
So
no, really, how are we going to learn to interact with each other in these worlds where each of us has a totally different amount of control in, right?
Yeah.
And maybe let's do another experiment that one of the things I really liked was just passing you stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What can I pass you? Let's see. Is there like a pen? Oh, here's a dice. Can I pass you the dice? Let's
Maybe. I think you can roll the dice.
Wait, I don't want to roll. I want to give it to you. Ah! It fell through your hand.
Here.
Oh, we can handshake. Give it to me. Give it to me.
I guess it fell
falling through my hand. Interesting. So, in this Facebook world, we cannot pass dice to each other, but
I can pass you this pen.
You can pass you a pen, which is very cool because we can now draw things if we want to. But yeah, this is again why I'm so fascinated with VR and hacking our brains, because we can really control things and control an environment in ways that we never had this capability before.
So can you see this?
It's not just about the visual sense; it's about everything around us. Yeah.
You can see this. So this is an illustration of a neuron. Yeah, and the density of neurons, which you were just talking about, they're very densely packed in the brain. And so an example neuron. Let's see. What I wanted to show you was we have this, which is I don't know if you can see that there. This is the well, actually, let's start with this one first. So this is an example of different
networks.
Different
networks that are activated.
Different
under more or less specific conditions, I guess.
Yeah. So the idea is that when your neurons activate in a circuit, you can see and there is a video that I got, but I'm not going to show it. But gosh, I wish I could turn off the sound. It's driving me nuts. It is. It's really driving me nuts. Like, that's not fair.
It's like a meditation and hum.
Yeah. But okay, let's try media. Let's see this. Saved. Explore. Let's try to put this. Okay.
No, mute will do this by my microphone.
Yeah. Okay, let's see where this happened. Okay, I don't know where that's coming from, but now we're in a different location.
Whoa, look at us. We're so high.
It didn't stop. Unfortunately, that didn't stop the that background noise. Yeah. What is that coming from? Anyway.
Micah is just in your head.
So
I can hear it too.
So what I was going to say with this, when you have a neural circuit, you have a sequence of neurons. It could be 5 or 6. It could be a lot of neurons that are lighting up in a sequence, and they're not necessarily directly connected, or we're not necessarily aware of all the connections. But
it just have a statistical correlation in time, right?
Yeah, and so, but you could say that because of if you watch videos of this activity as it's been mapped, it kind of suggests that our brain's neurons are lighting up, and it kind of suggests the electromagnetism, that our neurons are activated by electromagnetism. And the point that I bring up is that maybe because we have our dendrite. Let's see if this has dendrites in it. Yeah, we have dendritic. The idea is that dendrites are computers. They're like mini computers, and they have all this amazing processing capability. And the idea here, what is
little things?
Yeah. So the idea is they have all these. They all have these amazing. It's like they branch like trees, right? And they have all these different hairs, and they can actually
combine the data that they get in very complex ways.
Yeah, and apparently
to decide what to pass on and what not, I guess. And of course, this is very chemical. Giving them anthropomorphizing them is a bit problematic. But yeah, they're extremely intelligent in their own way.
So one of the ideas from the neural basis of free will, Peter C, was that he's just trying to say that in some cases we make our decisions for what we're going to do in advance, and our decisions are based on all these little tiny bits of criteria. So if we encounter some situation or some person that matches all this criteria, then we have already planned to act in a way, and that sort of gets around the idea that your decisions are you can see your if you're measuring your brainwaves, you can sometimes see your decision before you're personally aware of it.
Exactly.
But
that's a very famous experiment.
That it could be possible that's because you sort of planned your decision of what you would do if certain criteria were met, and so he's trying to say that maybe it's not that your decisions are being decided without your conscious awareness, that your decisions are being decided at a previous time when you decided them. And then they're sort of maybe perhaps stored in dendrites, which can activate their own action potentials and start causing neural activity. And so the dendrite is perfectly positioned to. So normally when we see let me just grab a picture of a neuron here. Normally, no, actually not that one. Let's grab this one. So normally in textbooks they say like a neuroscience textbook, they'll say that the action potential travels between cells in a chemical synapse, and but they actually travel in a cell body, and what travels between neurons in a chemical synapse is the neurotransmitter. So you can see with medical imaging that it looks like there are electrical signals passing between neurons when you look at medical imaging, but what's actually happening is the action potential is just passing along the body of a single cell, and what travels between are chemical activations that can trigger cells further down the line. But what you don't see in all these textbooks, neuroscience, is the really complex mappings between all the neurons. So this is this right here represents this right here, and this is the dendrite. So the dendrite could activate something. Then, as we were noticing in the previous call, there could be between 10,000 and 200,000 connections between all these different cells. So the question is, when you have a neural circuit, which I bring this one, if each point, let's say this point is a cycle of activity, if each point is connected to 10,000 or 200,000 other possible neurons, how is it possible that this circuit lights up in a consistent way when that signal could be traveling down any possible branch? And so the hypothesis that I have is that the dendrite itself, when you say you have a future decision you're going to make, the dendrite itself is going to, when all the criteria are met, it's going to become the lowest possible negative, and electromagnetic negative. So a lightning bolt will strike the most negative point on the Earth. And so that would be a way for a dendritic computer to attract a signal to itself, and thus it would allow for an organized neural circuit where you have a consistent pattern of activity, where these would be the dendrites that have the lowest point of electromagnetic negativity, and they are attracting the signals to themselves, creating a consistent neural circuit in the brain that resembles a highly coordinated pattern of action. And so when you have a neural circuit, like imagine that each one of them, let's say that imagine we have a neural circuit that's very general, and one of them represents the, let's go back to the hierarchy of patterns in your brain. So you have patterns that represent eyes at some level, dogs and cats, and you have this guy, I don't know if I brought it this time, but you have this guy, his name is Jack Gallant, and he mapped out in the neocortex all these semantic relationships between neural correlations and and different things that people see in movies, like dogs and cats and houses, and so he was saying, like, in different parts of the brain, he says, you know, dogs will be here, cats will be here. Let me get that pen. And so he would say like, you know, somewhere over here is dogs, and some over here is cats, and some over here is motorbikes, and some over here is cars, and cars and motorbikes will be closer together, and dogs and cats will be closer together, and people would be closer to dogs and cats and farther away from motorbikes and cars.
You build a contextual network of again, all of it is based on just these statistical correlations, right?
Yeah, so all these sensory patterns would be creating, like, this would be one part of your neocortex and maybe from your eyes, and this would be creating like or eyes and ears, and this would be creating like visual patterns, and you have audio patterns, and then your different parts of your brain would represent that. And then when you have your neural activity, which sorry, I'm getting dizzy. When you have your neural activity, the idea is that in 1 second of neural activity, maybe you're seeing someone, like I'm seeing Sara right now, or I'm seeing this image, and in the next millisecond I'm hearing my voice, and the next millisecond I'm thinking about myself wearing this headset, and the next millisecond I'm looking at the world behind Sara, and in the next one I'm looking at the pictures behind Sara, and each second is made up of all these conceptual models, which consist of coincidence patterns in the brain, and they're lighting up in a sequence in a neural circuit, and because they are because of the dendritic computation. And so then,
and yes, you're talking about trying to hack this information directly from the thalamus. It gets all distributed.
That's right.
And I thought it was a pretty interesting and novel idea.
Yeah.
Not sure how it will be possible, but it's a very interesting idea to try to get this, at least the bottom-up information, or where the feedback is happening. We're getting this top-down feedback. Everything seems to, or almost everything seems to the thalamus.
Yeah.
So that could be definitely an interesting thing to try to get type of reading from there, which isn't really possible.
So if we're trying to imagine how the brain, actually let me grab this one right here. If we're trying to imagine how the information flows through the brain, with regard to the visual cortex, let's say the eye is, let me grab that pen again. This tracking is not so good. It was much better yesterday, but so imagine your eye is right around here, right? And so you have, photons are bouncing off your ganglia, and your ganglia are, the proteins are flipping, and it's causing ionic displacement of calcium and potassium ions, and the so separating of charges, positive and negative charges, and that results in an action potential, which is triggering chemical synapses. And so you see signals in medical imaging traveling from the eye along the optic nerve to the thalamus, which is here in the center, which I'm pointing out with a marker right now. And so the signals travel, the optic is the optic nerve, this thalamus, and then they travel back here to the visual cortex. This is the occipital lobes, and these are the parietal lobes right here. And something similar happens with ears. So with your, you have your ears would be out here somewhere. Let me get a different marker for ears. And I don't know if they can see this. So your ears would be out here somewhere. And again, the signals are going to travel to the thalamus, and then they're going to travel to the audio cortex. And so the point being that your eyes and your ears and most of your senses except for your nose are going to travel through to the thalamus first. Now I was talking to I went to a meetup and I saw David Eagleman, who's a kind of a well-known neuroscience author, and he was saying that if you're trying to use medical imaging to what are you trying to get?
Me.
Yeah, you. Oh.
Feedback to myself.
Let me send this over to you. So if you're trying to do medical imaging,
we should try to
with EEG from the scalp, if you consider the work of Jack Gallant, all the semantic relationships are spread out in a sparse and distributed pattern all over the whole brain at the point within the neocortex. But if you consider that all the incoming senses go to the thalamus first, the thalamus could be the optimal place to look for to create a new brain-computer interface. If you could have a sensor, and so I know of some new sensor technology that's coming, but if you could have a sensor that you could either insert up the nose to target the thalamus reading, or point it from the nose up to the nasal canal to target the thalamus, and the sensor is like a light field sensor but for electromagnetism, and you can configure it for so you can notice the origin point of a brainwave. You can predict it like a light field camera for brainwaves. And then if you can map the signals coming from the thalamus, then you have the signals before they get more broadly distributed across the neocortex. It'd be where, and so what's interesting is about the thalamus is that not only does everything go into your neocortex, it goes through the thalamus to your neocortex and gets, all the semantic map is all over the place, but that stuff, it's a big feedback loop, so it all comes back into the thalamus. Like the thalamus is like the bottom and the top of the pyramid, and your brain is like a big feedback loop. And so it all goes through the neocortex and back into the thalamus. So that could be like the integration point for all the different sensory modalities. So if you're seeing a dog and a cat and a house and a motorcycle and a car all at the same time, it could be that those things are being grouped. Or being like there's a neural circuit that's running through the neocortex and passing that information back into the thalamus where it's being integrated. And I think that could be true. I don't know. So the idea here is that if we could take the self-driving car type of computer to put it in a backpack, and it can formulate a so there's this Matterport just released this really cool, this is a 3D camera company, and they just released a really cool AI that can recognize patterns from pixels and also draw shapes around the recognized patterns. And so anyway, the idea is that if you can have an AI look for the patterns of something in the world, like what Sarah's drawing right now, and say
a car right now.
She's drawing a car right now.
I have a self-driving car.
So the idea is all these lines and edges that represent the self-driving car as a conceptual pattern in the computer could be... Oh, thanks. Thank you. Now we've got a car.
We have a car.
So the idea is that concept can be recognized by the computer, and at the same time, the idea is to apply some new brain-computer interfaces and deep learning programs to studying the brain, looking for next-generation neural correlation to the outside world, so that we're combining the conceptual models of the world that the computer recognizes with the conceptual models that the computer's making of our brainwaves, to say, well, this car in the world, this pattern of a car matches this brainwave pattern in our head. And then the next step is we look at the work of Olaf Sporns, right, and the networks of the brain. Say if the brain is like a network, what is the communication protocol? Is it more like TCP is like UDP? Are we throwing packets, or is there a firm handshake? Is there a feedback loop? That sort of thing. So that's one of the things we talk about. And if we can figure out the communication protocol with the brain, which I think could be alternating transmission protocol, which means alternating between TCP and UDP type of connections. For conscious stuff, it would be I don't know. I feel like I'm just going on like a. But anyway, so
I'm being fascinated by avatar beliefs by itself.
Yeah.
And it's messing with my brain seriously.
At least your avatar is not talking when I'm talking. That's what was happening yesterday.
Well, I hid my mouse partially because of that.
Yeah. I don't think it's happening. Again, I think it's because we were in the same room.
So I do feel that this is part because I am controlling some of the movements.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's that it didn't come from my body. My brain goes what just happened here, right?
Yep. So the reason I have...
These are things that VR design I have to start thinking about.
So I'm part of this group that makes this program called Microdose VR Vision Agency. And what we're doing with Microdose VR, what we're doing is we're combining VR with EEG. And
cleaning your mess.
So it's creating... Let me show you an image of the graphics of Micah, if I have it. Yeah, so... Microdose VR has these amazing graphics, okay? And so you get there with your controllers and you're creating these amazing graphics. Let me show you this. Resize this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have your brainwaves. This is already working. This was in the Neuralace podcast number 5. I talked to Android Jones. We got this headset from Muse, and let me pull this Muse down. Okay, grab that. Oh, What did I do?
You could grab my mind move.
Oh, sorry.
Which is a.
So we got this headset from Muse, okay, and the Muse headband, and it integrates into the Facebook. I don't know if you can see that. It integrates into Facebook's. It integrates into the Vive headset. Here's another one. This one is Neurable. This is another EEG for a Vive headset. And so anyway, right now we're working with Muse. We're looking to get a Neurable, but the point is that your brainwaves can drive changes to light and sound effects in microdose VR, and that enable you to become aware of how your thoughts and feelings are brainwaves and how those brainwaves are causing changes to light and sound effects. In fact, it's seeing the changes in light and sound effects that sort of like expands your awareness of your brainwaves and how your thoughts and feelings are brainwaves or are reflected in brainwaves, is what I meant to say.
I find it's a really interesting and fun experience.
Another microdose VR picture. What? Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Your turn.
So I said it's a really fun experience in microdose, and I love that it's one of the best VR experiences that I've tried. And have you tried Mind Mover? That's my trippy experience.
Yeah, well, you know, it was so.
The next meetup.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when I'm organized,
you can do it actually.
Okay, I'll download it because I was organizing and I really want to. No, actually, I did try it. Yeah, I did try, but I only
tried Mind Mover. So you get to the world.
That's right.
When you dance, the world comes alive and changes.
That's right.
About these experiences is that they hack the brain. Again, you're giving different statistics than what you're used to. You're creating synesthetic effects, and that's a very, very powerful tool of letting go of normal reality and the normal world model, and updating things and just getting your brain into a calmer or more relaxed state or more active state, depending on what you need at those times.
So I wanted to say, so this here is, the idea is that when you see, this is a meme that I made, when you see something, a part of your neocortex represents it, and you could call that an advanced data structure in your biology, and that advanced data structure may consist of a local microcircuit of neurons that change direction or frequency of your brain, and I'm referring to like where's that image with the neural circuits, where I'm saying that maybe the advanced data structure, like what you're seeing right now, could be patterns in that advanced data structure. It could be that microcircuit that's activating that pattern in your brain. And so anyway, that's the idea. And so if that's true, then that makes the case for why, once we have that pattern, once we know the transmission protocol of the brain, if we have that in the computer, then we can create an artificial neurons or just a device that can send and receive electromagnetic signals and send the pattern, the difference between the pattern that you have in your thalamus right now and the pattern of what your thalamus would be if you had something in your reality like these glasses, like these glasses right here. If you had that pattern, the idea is that if you have this pattern in the computer, you can send it back through the transmission protocol, through electromagnetic signals, cause your neuron in your brain to fire in a pattern that is isometric to the pattern that the computer recognized when you were looking at glasses, and you would see glasses in your reality that are not actually there via so it's virtual reality. It's sent directly to your brain. Basically, any pattern you could create for your brain if you know what that pattern is and you know the transmission protocol of the brain. And that's the like sort of funny part. But the really sort of like useful and not super fun part is that if we understand how bunches of neurons communicate to other branches of neurons, if we understand that network protocol and we understand how those communication signals are packaged and what the data looks like, then we could do things like reconnect spines, and we could connect artificial limbs or transport your sense of self into an artificial body, and you could have like a mechanical we do a little bit of that now with VR. And so what we've been talking about in a sense is the convergence of all these great technologies like artificial intelligence and virtual reality and medical imaging like EEG. And so we're beginning to see the convergence of like biometric sensors, EEG, ECG, like heart rate sensors, and eye tracking, pupil dilation sensors into VR headsets coming anyways. And people are figuring out how to combine, of course, blockchain and all these other great technologies and drones together. And that is the topic of our meetup in November, where I was going to be talking, the San Francisco VR. So we're going to be talking.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about conversion of virtual reality with biosensors and how we for pain management, for health, for good things, maybe about the dangers and what we should be aware that companies might be doing with our.
I want to mention.
Important.
I want to mention that we've been Microdose VR has been talking to a bunch of neuroscientists. Like one of them is Adam Gasly, and Gasly's lab, is well known for a lot of different things. But one that's working on now is getting approval to prescribe VR for pain relief, and he's actually going to the FDA to get approval. And as soon as he does that, Microdose VR is going to be following short on their tails to get this prescribed for general pain relief. To get this passed for certification, so that doctors can prescribe VR apps like Microdose VR for pain relief, and for you can get the app for meditation. You could use it for fitness because it's a very dancing app. When I demo this, when Android demos this at events, people get in it, and we have these videos of people, and they just start dancing because it's so fun. But there's enormous potential for healing from VR apps, and there's also like enormous potential for VR developers have to be very responsible, because there's definitely potential to do the reverse, to not do the good things to mind. And
I think there's a lot more research that it has to be this, and part of what we were discussing this yesterday, of why we changed our avatars don't look too sort of in this valley of, yes, they are our brains to identify with, but then I look like a 10-year-old. My brain just start thinking that I'm a 10-year-old. I don't think that will be healthy for it. Then my brain start thinking that, I could be a weird duck creature with hops and stuff.
So much better.
That is going to a totally different paradigm. Won't compare with real me, and when I go back to reality. And these are things we have to start thinking about. But the more people spend and what it is the world outside of VR are going to be like, we have to find to combine well and not create very disturbing effects that might happen if we don't take care.
So let's talk a little bit more about your company. And who's this gentleman here that works with you at your company? Matt.
So this is Matt Ho.
Can you grab his photo? Oh.
And he's.
People can see it. People can see it. Okay. Let's Matt's a co-founder. Okay.
And he's a middleman. He does web VR because right now, there's all these different like Oculus, Samsung, and more is just coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And a good way to sort of to just go through web VR, and you can just create websites that will work with the platforms, and that's sort of his expertise. And the project we're doing is going to be based on that. Mm-hmm. Create a memory palace experiment and see if you can learn French better, and it will just be a few words and an experimental condition. But we're very curious if being in an immersive place, experts create memory palaces using visual imagery to remember a word and create a path. What if I could literally take you to path to learn the words? Would you remember them better? So that's our hypothesis.
So, I wish I could grab this, but maybe I can. Okay. So one thing that I think might be useful to explaining why VR can be more powerful for learning and
our hands.
Yeah. Oh, it was a handshake.
Like exploring.
Oh, we did it.
Cool. We were just in the same space, and then the hands just decided to shake, which is
so
Facebook, thinking about consent.
One hypothesis for why VR can have such a powerful effect on your ability to learn could come down to this concept of criterial causation. The idea is if you have if your neurons are coincidence detectors and your hierarchy of detecting high-level coincidence patterns, and with VR you're creating this world around you, this world of information, which is it's creating a lot of criteria.
The designer can control, right? It's up to the designer to put in what is a coincidence.
Well, what I'm saying is that you have this volume of spatial information that takes up huge space when you're in VR, and that could definitely lead to causing your brain to trigger at a higher level when it's trying to absorb and learn from all the different information.
Proprioception, that's a very big thing too. Like the fact that it correlates, my visual sense correlates to my proprioception, and it is. That's very important, and the fact that we can get out to be 3D now. So the more senses you get into it, the more just reality. The virtual part is just means something controlling it, except for the forces of nature.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll say that one of the guests we have, one of the confirmed speakers, besides Sara and Virtual Bytes, we also have Decentraland. You mentioned that Matt is really into web VR. Well, Decentraland is going to be talking about the convergence of web VR with blockchain, which is which I think maybe Matt would be interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you very much. Sarah. Thanks for whoever watched. I think person is watching.
We got to some point, but we'll see.
We'll check out the sound.
And then, yeah.
Okay. Cheers.